First, we're going to talk with Hollywood star Elinor Donahue. She has a new book out. It's called In the Kitchen with Elinor Donahue. And you, of course, are familiar with Elinor from Father Knows Best. She was the oldest daughter on the Father Knows Best series. She also appeared for a year as Andy Griffith's girlfriend on the Andy Griffith Show. She was a regular on The Odd Couple, and most recently, she's been featured on Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Elinor, welcome to WHO Radio.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's lovely talking with you.
Well, it is such a pleasure to read your book. What a fascinating life you had.
Yes, it has been.
I had no idea some of the experiences you had had. For example, in the 40s, you were a child actress in movies. You had done some dancing.
I was in vaudeville.
Yeah.
Right before vaudeville ended. I don't think I killed it. Yeah, I was with the Burt Levy circuit in the Pacific Northwest, and the same circuit that Milton Berle played on in the East, the Burt Levy circuit.
And then you've done a number of stage shows in the past few years.
Oh, yes.
And just so many different experiences that you write about in the book that are kind of intertwined with all the different recipes, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of memories and a collection of recipes. And I caution to say that it isn't a cookbook per se. I mean, I'm not teaching anybody how to cook. They're just favorite recipes of my memory from my past, and favorite recipes that belong to people that I've worked with over the years.
Now, I've noticed recently that there have been a number of celebrity-type cookbooks out, you know, like they've done a Gilligan's Island thing, and the Andy Griffith people have done things. So what makes yours different? Why did you do yours?
Well, I think because it covers a whole life, and it means to tell about my whole, I mean, it tells more about my family. It's not so much about a show or reminiscences about a particular show, but it is of my whole life, and I mean for it to feel when someone's read it that they've sat down with me over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and we've had a nice chat. It's just meant to be a comfortable book.
I think that's why I liked it more than those other cookbooks, because the other cookbooks tend to be just basically cookbooks with some anecdotes thrown in, and yours starts at the beginning of your life and really tells a whole story interspersed with these recipes. For example, go back to the 40s. You've worked with many famous stars when you were a child. You know, Doris Day and Elizabeth Taylor and Donald O'Connor and Ray Bolger. And do you recall those days? Or those when you had to put the book together? Were the memories fairly vivid?
Oh, exactly. Just as though it all happened yesterday. As a matter of fact, there were many more memories than there was space for the book. So I had to be very selective. Actually, I went with memories that I had photographs of. But, you know, I go back so far. I feel like a dinosaur sometimes because my first movie, Mr. Big, with Donald O'Connor, had stars of the day whom nobody today would have heard of unless they're my age and unless they were, you know, really interested in the movies then. But Gloria Jean and Peggy Ryan, and I was delighted when I contacted them to be able to get recipes from them.
That's neat.
And we contacted Donald O'Connor, and his wife responded, but not in time to get anything in the book. It had to go to the publisher by the time.
Now, do you or any of your children ever watch your childhood movies?
My sons do occasionally. They've seen them all, you know, and I have them on tape, but I don't watch them. I have 4 grandchildren, and one little granddaughter lives near me, and one of her favorite tapes to watch in the evening is Three Daring Daughters, what I did when I was 9.5, 10 years old. And the reason I say 9.5 and 10 is that it covered, I started it when I was 9.5 and finished it when I was over 10.
That must be fun.
And she was, I was sitting on the bed with her, and she was watching her on her mommy's television set. And there I was at this little tiny girl, and she was looking at me. I was watching the screen, and I suddenly realized that she was staring at me very intently. She's 4, and I said, "Is it funny for you to see Grandma sitting here on the bed and to see Grandma when she was a little girl?" And she didn't even say a word. She didn't, her big eyes, and she went, It must be very strange, but it's her favorite. It's her favorite movie.
There were so many child stars, back in the 50s who went on to have problems and, lots of negative reports, but yours seemed to be a fairly positive life. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes. I had my ups and downs, but nothing nothing major, and certainly no more than anyone else in life has.
So why does it seem like the dysfunctional ones always get the publicity?
Well, because that's more exciting. Everybody wants to read about that. Nobody wants to read about just, it's normal. I mean, if you go to the grocery store and go to the cleaners and come home and cook dinner, is that exciting?
Yeah,
no. If you go out and you get arrested, that's exciting to read about. So I can perfectly understand that, and the reasons for my having missed all that is by the grace of God and my mother, and I was just blessed, that's all.
So your mother was a real strong influence on you. She essentially got you into your career. At any point, did you regret that? Because you hear of stage mothers, so to speak, that are pushing their kids into the movies.
No, I can't say that I ever regretted it. She and I had our problems, but they didn't have anything to do with... we had our problems when I was older, but not anything to do with my having been in the business. No way.
So you were happy that she led you into that?
Yeah, it was all I ever knew, you see. And when you're doing the only thing you've ever known, you don't know anything else. So that's I was perfectly happy doing what I was doing. Yeah, if I'd been totally miserable, you take a child and they're digging their heels in and say, "No, mommy, don't make me do that anymore." Obviously, she wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And she did ask me at one point when things were rough for us if I was about 8, I guess, and she said, "Why don't we just pack up and go home and end this thing now?" And I said, "Oh no, I really love it. I really want to stay." And I think maybe I was also saying what I thought she wanted me to say, but also deep down I meant it. If I had really hated it, and I said, "Mother, I hate it, and I want to go home," we would have.
What was fascinating to me was to read that she was still working like in a candy shop or something. There were still lean years where she had to go back to work. And our picture, I think, of Hollywood stars are that they just have lots of money and their life is always good, but that's not always true.
She didn't work after Father Knows Best. From Father Knows Best on, she was okay. It was after my MGM period when I went through the growth spurt, as it were. I was still a little girl at 12 years old, but I was nearly as tall as I am now, which is 5'4.5". And so I looked like a woman, but I was really a little girl, called the awkward age, which all little teenagers go through. And so there wasn't a great deal of work for me, and things were very, very, very rough. And she worked in the daytime at a store called the May Company. It was a big chain in those days, as a wrapper down in the basement. And then, I don't mean a wrapper like a gift wrapper. Got to be careful these days. And then she worked at nights for a costumer, and they made some of the costumes for the new to be open Disneyland.
Wow.
So and then she and I worked right before I got Father Knows Best. In between my dancing jobs, I was in the chorus, dancing in the chorus line during some of those times. She and I worked in a candy factory. And she worked on a regular basis. And one year, I was about 15 or 16, and she said, "Do you want Christmas this year, like presents and things?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, if you do, you're going to come to work at the factory."
See, I can't picture that. Here, you were in all these movies with all these big stars, and then you're working as a teenager in a candy factory.
Yeah, it was fun. I liked it.
Isn't that something? Our guest is Elinor Donahue. She's author of In the Kitchen with Elinor Donahue. It's not just recipes, but it's also her life story. When we come back, we're going to talk with her about Father Knows Best and her memories from some of her other great TV shows she was involved with. As we continue on News Radio 1040 WHO, right now we're going out to Van and Bonnie, and they are tasting some of that delicious butter braid bread.
First of all, I got to say I'm envious of you. I've always loved Elinor Donahue.
Don't you love her?
Back from even like Andy Griffith when she was on there.
That's right.
Yeah.
You love this book, Van, because the book has some great pictures, and also she reminisces about working with different people and stars and things like that.
Well, it's neat you got her on the show. Thanks. For doing that.
Our guest in this segment of Winzenburg on the Weekend, Elinor Donahue from Father Knows Best. You know her as the oldest daughter, but also she appeared for a year on the Andy Griffith Show as Andy's very first girlfriend. She was on Odd Couple for a couple of years, and most recently she's been seen in Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman as Jane Seymour's older sister. And Elinor, before we talk about your work on Father Knows Best, we have a phone caller. We have Mike who'd like to talk to you.
Great.
Mike, say hello to Elinor Donahue. Hi, Mike.
That show, it's so much, if you think back a little bit, it sure beats what we get on TV nowadays.
Right.
It's just like, it was wholesome, so whatever was really happening, we had a good view that that was a goal that we all wanted to be at least a positive.
Yeah, it was
rather than a
positive.
negative.
Right, positive role models.
Wonderful. Thank you so
I
much.
really enjoyed that. It was fun seeing you all on there and everything, and so it was neat.
Thanks,
well,
Mike.
thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Eleanor, I teach a class at Grandview College in sitcoms, and we have this discussion about what were 50s sitcoms really all about. Some people view them as being not positive because they say they were unrealistic. I know we even teach a section where we talk about Father Knows Best, and Billy Gray, who starred with you in the show, calls Father Knows Best a hoax and a painful embarrassment. What's your view of 50s sitcoms?
I thought it was quite wonderful. It was meant to be an entertainment. It was meant to lighten people's life for 1/2 an hour. It wasn't meant to be a treatise on how to live your life. If you wanted to take it that way, that's fine. But it was meant to be a wholesome sitcom, and that was all it was.
This kind of came out again when Robert Young died this year. You could kind of sense in some of the quotes that I read from Billy Gray that he still hadn't settled this inside of himself. He still kind of thought the whole thing wasn't that great.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It was a wonderful job for me, and frankly, it was an acting job. I never thought of it that I was minister, for instance.
Right.
That I was preaching to people. I was doing an acting job. I was learning lines, hitting my marks, trying to do them the best I could, and I thought the scripts were excellently crafted. A great deal of thought went into the casting, and we couldn't change one if, and, or but once the script came to us, unlike today, where they change right up to the moment of taping.
And the acting was great. You were nominated for an Emmy Award.
Yes, I was.
The acting was just phenomenal.
Yeah, it was really wonderful. We had a great director, two great directors. Well, our first director was, oh, goodness sakes. I don't have the book in front of me, and I can't remember. Russell, Mr. Russell. And then Peter Tewksbury was our second director we had for the last 4 years, and he was terrific. And he introduced me to a kind of acting style that I had never had the opportunity to do before. And he had a lot of little tricks that he used that kind of that were indeed tricks, but they worked. And I had a wonderful time.
So is TV today better than the 50s, or should
TV is different because the world is different.
Yeah.
And it can't, you can't stand still.
But now, Eleanor, you've been in some of those Fox sitcoms. You were in that one,
Get a Life.
Get a Life. Yeah, you were the mom in Get a Life. And so you've been in some little wild sitcoms yourself here.
Yeah, that was pretty weird. It wasn't off color, but it was
just different.
It was different.
That was that Chris Elliott sitcom. I just remember him riding his bike. That's all I remember. Yeah.
He always plays such a dopey guy, and at least in that show he did, and kind of a doofus rather. And but in point of fact, he is the most gentlemanly, most wonderful young man. I was absolutely crazy about him. He was very courtly, very nice.
So sitcoms today are just different. They're not necessarily worse or better.
It's very different. And of course, with the 3-camera thing, we were shot on film. Father Knows Best and the Andy Griffith Show were on film. And now they're 3 or 4 camera tape with an audience, which is a whole different. It's a different ball game. It's a different technique, and they will change lines right up through. Now they did that on the Odd Couple as well. They changed lines right up to the moment of taping. But in today's shows, they'll do 2 shows. They'll do an early show and then a later show, and put the best of both together, and then they'll do pickups afterward. But if they do one take of a scene, and they don't get the laugh that they wanted, they'll come in and say this, say that, do this, do that, and they go, okay, action, and then you do it, and you don't know what you're lying, what you're trying to do, what I am anyway, trying to remember what on earth the director told me to say. Yeah. So I never feel as comfortable in those new shows, and I think it has shown.
I have to ask you, just to finish up, about 2 shows in particular. Andy Griffith Show, you were on for a year as Andy's girlfriend, and then you left. You decided to not renew your contract, or you essentially got out of it.
Yeah, I had a 3-year contract, and I was going through some personal problems at the time, and I just was, as they'd say today,
you were
just
so
kind of
good.
Bummed out. And I didn't think I was doing a good job, and I wanted to quit before I was fired.
I'm sorry, you were so much better than the woman that
got.
No,
she was wonderful.
She was good too, and I'm not putting her down. But there's something about that first year's episodes with you and Andy, the little, I don't know.
Well, I just
Something
didn't think
between you two.
I just didn't think I was doing a good job, and I thought I was going to get let go. And
And of course, now you know the fans think you were great. You go to these
I know.
You go to the big meetings with all the Andy
I
Griffith
do,
fans.
yeah.
And then I also have to ask about Star Trek, because you appeared on an episode of Star Trek.
Yes.
And that, of course, is another whole genre where people are got fans out there, and they probably want to find out all the inside details on that too, right?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It was fun. It was interesting. We've shot, and I tell this story in the book. I was supposed to be on the show about 10 days, and we shot the landing of this spacecraft, and went on to other things. And the next day, we found out that something had happened to the film in the lab, and they'd already torn down the set. So
Wow.
there was a gap of about a week or so before I was able to go back and do the rest of the work. We had to reshoot everything that we
They had
shot
to
up to
reconstruct
that
that whole set, yeah.
Yeah. Then they actually, somebody else had come in and used that stage, and then they had to wait for them to be finished and then rebuild the set. So in the meanwhile, I caught one of those terrible flus that go around every few years, and lost an awful lot of weight. When I came back, the costumer was appalled because my little green outfit that I was wearing as Commander Hedford was hanging on me.
Yeah.
So they made this big scarf business to cover up my bony chest and arms.
That reminds me, you were pregnant one of the years in Father Knows Best, and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
They hid you for, it was the third season, I think. I was shocked.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. They did a pretty good job hiding you. I don't know what they did, but they must have cut your clothes in such a way. I never noticed that, and sure enough.
I didn't show very much.
Wow.
I only showed if I stood sideways, so I didn't stand sideways. I'd walk into a set and then I'd walk back out again.
Well, these are some of the juicy little things that you can find out in this book. It's just a lot of fun. I've got so many different stories we could talk about, but you did a really nice job. It's called...
Thank you.
Elinor, thank you so much for being with us. You're a real special person.
Thank you. I had a lovely time.
Thanks a lot.